No, my greatest moment that I ever had in the Forum was not when I coached, is when I played. I played my only game in the Montreal Forums. It was after Rocket Richard had been suspended for hitting Al Laco over the head. And they're going to honor Bernie Geoffrion, who won the scoring race. But they're mad at Bernie because he beat out the Rocket, the only time the Rocket had a chance to win the scoring title. So Bernie comes on the ice, and they boo. They booed their own players. It was unbelievable.
I was there when Clarence Campbell suspended the Rocket. The people just began to damaging everything. They turned the trolley cars over. They were going to tear the town down.
Clarence Campbell was this Anglo, telling Rocket Richard that he couldn't play for the Canadiens. I mean, it wasn't just a hockey decision. There was also a cultural, political, a kind of emotional thing that went back to Confederation. I still get pissed off thinking about it.
The place went nuts. They loved the Rocket.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans, United States and Newfoundland.
Well, Saturday night obviously was the hockey night, and then sit with the family, eat blueberry pie. My dad would show up by 7 or 7:30 after a long day at work with the pie, and us boys dug into that, and boy, it made that game great.
Growing up in Hull, Quebec, and going to the Vigier Tavern with my grandfather, the black and white TV stuck up in the corner, the table piled high with draft or quart bottles, and watching the greats like Maurice Richard and Geoffrion play for the Canadiens.
My dad would pull the bed out of the couch in the living room because Mom was in the bedroom watching the color TV, and we would watch Hockey Night in Canada, black and white.
I had to go to bed early. I was like, come on, like 2 more whistles. And oh, that's not fair. That's like icing. Come on, it's not a real whistle.
The victory cheers as the Canadiens would take a game, and then going out in the snow and making our way home in the snowfall. Quintessential Canadian memory.
Are you kidding? How does this get better? Unless, I was 5 and Dad introduced me to, beer.
And so the year after the riots, Maurice Richard channeled his anger into getting even, and he led Les Canadiens to an unprecedented 5 straight Stanley Cups. And there are a lot of people who believe that the Richard riots were the spark that lit the flame to the Quiet Revolution. And that brings us smashing into the 60s. So during the 60s, the eyes of the world were all trained on Montreal. You had Expo 67. There was the Summer of Love. Trudeau-mania was sweeping all across the country. There was peace, love, and rock and roll. Hell, even John Lennon's Bet-In happened right here. And Quebec was going through its own revolution. The independence movement was gaining strength. But all the while, back on the ice, with Jean Beliveau's leadership, the Habs just kept winning.
So if the Canadiens have their name on the cup the most, you have your name on the cup the second most, and then the Leafs. Like, you have your name on the cup an awful lot of times. And talk about what it means to put on the Canadiens jersey.
It's a dream to one day belong to this organization, to wear the uniform, and after you make the team, it's to win the cup.
I remember coming to our seats, walking by Beliveau. And he was gigantic. I mean, I was 8 years old, and he was on skates. He's 6'3" or something already. But I remember walking around a corner and then going, and it just stopped me in my tracks. I just, wow.
Of course, I swooned over Jean Beliveau. I swooned. He was so gorgeous.
He shook my hand. I tell you, it was one of my greatest thrills I ever had.
He carried himself not only on the ice, but off the ice with such class.
If you ever want to look in the dictionary and see class, Jean Beliveau would be there.
When I was there was a dynasty. I remember having lunch with a guy one day. He was talking about hockey players. He said, why shouldn't the goalie have a mask like a catcher? So he drew one on the tablecloth, and of course it was Jacques Plante. And he was the first one to use a mask.
In the summertime, he'd work at this garage out on St. Catherine Street. My father used to work there too, so I used to get these signed postcards with him as a goaltender. I used to give him in school and stuff, so that's how I met Jacques Plante when I was a real young kid at that time. The first time I made a record, I was 18, yeah, it was 1966. Yeah. A lot of people were young and everybody wanted to party. So, you know, there was a lot of fun going on. And it got worse after, even more fun.
While Canada celebrated its centennial to the sounds of Bobby Jimby, artists in Quebec were singing, let's call it a different tune.
You're a frog, I'm a frog, kiss me, and I'll turn into a prince.
I was like, I think the first French Canadian to sing at the Forum for at least 10 years was like my trademark, to wear a hockey sweatshirt. And after that, lots of guys used to wear the hockey sweatshirt. But the first French Canadian who wore a hockey sweatshirt was Gratien Gélina.
My grandfather, Gratien Gélina, well, they call him the father of Quebec theater. His first success was Les Fridolinades. Fridolin was a kid playing hockey on the street. And he was talking about his life, about war, about poverty, because it was very difficult times for Quebecers. And Maurice Richard, he saw the play, and after that he went to see my grandfather. I think he was very moved by the play.
It's the 100th anniversary of the Habs, and I wonder for you, when you walk down the street, different people of different age groups will stop you. What do you hear? What do they tell you the most?
First of all, they say that's Maurice Richard's brother. I've been told that's still.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it doesn't. I don't mind. It's just it's been like this all my life.
He might be the only guy who's got his name on the cup 11 times who's referred to as somebody's brother.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was at the right place at the right time.
Tell me about the 70-71 against Chicago.
If we won that series, a little because of Ken Dryden.
The Montreal Canadiens were not supposed to win the Stanley Cup. The year they brought in a goaltender named Ken Dryden.
Lost in the playoffs to the Montreal Canadiens, and an heralded goal.
The Canadiens were playing the Chicago Blackhawks, and Chicago, in the 7th and deciding game of the Stanley Cup Finals, had them 2-0 in the second period. And the Canadiens came back to win 3-2. And Henri Richard scored 2 goals in that one.
Jean Beliveau was his last game, and his last act as captain of the Canadiens was to carry the Stanley Cup off the ice. Well, that was a remarkable year, remarkable.
I remember the October crisis, and I remember just the stunning experience of walking down the street and seeing tanks. God, I mean, that's what doesn't belong here.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of bleeding hearts around who just don't like to see people with helmets and guns. All I can say is go on and bleed.
We try to stay away from this political thing. No, we were just working very hard towards a common goal, which was the Stanley Cup.
Your first Stanley Cup, you know, coming after the October crisis, there was thinking that might have been a part of the healing process.
All I remember was just the incredible emotion in the city at that time, and it was this improbable team doing the improbable of winning the cup in the end, and whether there was any connection to a feeling that emerged out of the October crisis, I don't know.